Most people think all Ford engines are pretty much the same, but choosing the wrong Ford engine can cost you thousands before you even hit 100,000 miles. Some are built to last for years without major issues, while others can become a problem much sooner than expected. In this video, we're exposing the ones that fail and the ones that actually last. So let's start with the three worst ones. Number 3. Ford 1.5L 1.6L EcoBoost coolant intrusion issue. If there's one Ford engine that has caused serious frustration for owners in recent years, it's the 1.5L and 1.6L EcoBoost. These engines make a lot of sense. Small displacement, turbocharged, efficient, and still capable of delivering enough power for everyday driving. That's exactly why Ford used them across multiple popular models like the Ford Escape, the Ford Fusion, and even certain versions of the Ford Focus. The problem is what started happening internally after some time on the road. One of the most well-known issues with these engines is something called coolant intrusion. Basically, coolant begins to leak into the cylinders due to a design flaw in the engine block. And when that happens, you're no longer dealing with normal wear and tear. You're dealing with a problem that can lead directly to engine failure. At first, the symptoms are easy to miss. You might notice the coolant level dropping slightly in your Escape without any visible leaks. Or maybe your Fusion starts running a bit rough, with occasional misfires that don't seem like a big deal. In something like a Focus, it might just feel like a small hesitation under acceleration. Nothing that immediately makes you think the engine is at risk, but internally, the situation is getting worse. As coolant enters the combustion chamber, it disrupts the combustion process and creates abnormal conditions inside the engine. Over time, this leads to increased stress, potential overheating, and in many cases, severe internal damage. And once it reaches that point, you're not fixing a small issue, you're often looking at a full engine replacement. What makes this even worse is how widespread it is. These engines were installed in high-volume, everyday vehicles, so we're not talking about rare cases. We're talking about daily drivers like the Escape being used for family life or the Fusion being used for commuting, where everything feels normal until the problem suddenly becomes serious. From the outside, it feels random. One vehicle develops the issue earlier, another later, but the root cause is the same. And that's what makes it risky for long-term ownership. This doesn't mean every single 1.5 or 1.6 EcoBoost will fail. But the fact that this issue is well documented across multiple models is enough to make it a concern. Because when it does happen, it's not a minor inconvenience. It's a major failure that hits hard. If you're looking for a Ford engine that will last without unexpected problems, this is one of the ones you need to approach with caution. Because when this issue shows up, it doesn't give you many second chances. Number 2. Ford 5.4L Triton V8, 3-valve 2004-2008. The 5.4L Triton V8 is one of those engines that looks great on paper and even feels strong when you drive it, but over time it became known for a series of problems that are hard to ignore. This is the 3-valve version, mainly found in trucks like the Ford F-150 from around 2004 to 2008, as well as models like the Expedition. At first glance, it's exactly what you'd want in a truck engine. A V8, decent power, solid torque, and the kind of setup that feels like it should be reliable for the long run. And when it's running well, it actually is a smooth and capable engine. The problem is what starts happening as the miles go up. One of the most well-known issues with this engine is related to the cam phasers. These components are part of the variable valve timing system, and when they start to wear out, they cause a very distinctive ticking or knocking noise, especially at idle. In something like an F-150, you'll hear it clearly once it starts, and it's not something you can easily ignore. But it's not just about the noise. When the cam phasers begin to fail, they affect how the engine manages timing. That leads to rough running, loss of performance, and in some cases, further internal stress if the issue isn't addressed. On top of that, this engine also became known for spark plug issues. Specifically, the spark plugs can break off during removal, which turns what should be a simple maintenance job into a much more complicated and expensive process. This is something many owners of F-150s and Expeditions discovered the hard way. And then there are general timing-related problems that can develop over time, especially if maintenance isn't perfect. Chains, tensioners, and related components can all contribute to long-term reliability concerns. What makes this engine tricky is that it doesn't always fail suddenly. A lot of owners drive these trucks for years, dealing with small issues that gradually get worse. The engine keeps running, but it's not running cleanly or efficiently anymore. In a truck like the F-150, which people rely on for daily use or work, this becomes frustrating. You expect durability, but instead, you're dealing with recurring problems that require attention and money. This doesn't mean every 5.4 Triton will be a disaster, but the number of known issues, especially with the 3-valve version, is enough to make it a risky choice if you're looking for something simple and long-lasting. Because with this engine, it's not just one problem. It's a combination of issues that, over time, can turn ownership into something much more expensive and complicated than it should be. Number 1. Ford DPS-6 PowerShift Dual-Clutch Transmission System. This one is a bit different because technically it's not the engine itself, but it directly affects how the car behaves, how power is delivered, and ultimately how the whole driving experience feels. And in many cases, it completely ruins what could have been a decent car. We're talking about the Ford DPS-6 PowerShift transmission, a dual-clutch system that was used in models like the Ford Focus and the Ford Fiesta, especially between around 2011 and 2016. On paper, this system sounded like a great idea. Faster shifts, better fuel efficiency, and a more modern driving feel compared to traditional automatic transmissions. But in real-world use, especially in daily driving, it turned out to be one of the most problematic systems Ford has released. One of the biggest complaints from owners is how unpredictable it feels. We're talking about jerky acceleration, hesitation when you press the gas, rough gear changes, and in some cases the car feeling like it doesn't know which gear it wants to be in. In a Ford Focus used as a daily commuter, this becomes extremely frustrating. You're in stop-and-go traffic, trying to drive smoothly, and the car is constantly hesitating or reacting in a way that feels unnatural. In something like a Fiesta, which is supposed to be simple and easy to drive, it completely takes away that simplicity. The issue comes from how this dual-clutch system behaves in low-speed situations. It's not as forgiving as a traditional automatic, and when combined with everyday driving conditions, it starts to show its weaknesses very quickly. And unlike a small engine issue that you might ignore for a while, this is something you feel every single time you drive the car. To make things worse, many owners ended up dealing with repeated repairs, clutch replacements, software updates, adjustments, and in some cases, the problems would come back even after being fixed. This is what makes it such a risky system. It's not just one isolated failure, it's a pattern of behavior that shows up across multiple vehicles and over long periods of time. So even though it's not technically the engine, it's directly tied to how that engine's power is delivered. And when that connection fails, the whole car feels unreliable. If you're looking for a smooth, predictable, and stress-free driving experience, this is one of those systems you want to avoid. Because instead of making the car feel modern and efficient, it often ends up doing the exact opposite. Alright, now that we've exposed the ones that can give you problems, let's get into the engines that actually hold up and are worth owning. Let's begin. Number 4. Ford 5.0 El Coyote V8. If there's one modern Ford engine that has earned respect across the board, it's the 5.0 El Coyote V8. This is the kind of engine that proves you can still have power, reliability, and long-term durability without overcomplicating everything. Originally introduced in the Ford Mustang and later used in the Ford F-150, the Coyote quickly built a reputation for being strong, responsive, and surprisingly reliable for a performance-oriented V8. One of the biggest advantages of this engine is its balance. It delivers solid power, but it's not pushed to extreme limits like some smaller turbocharged engines. That means less stress per component and a more predictable long-term behavior. In something like an F-150, this engine feels right at home. It provides enough power for towing, daily driving, and even more demanding situations without constantly feeling like it's working at the edge of its limits. And in the Mustang, it gives you performance without sacrificing reliability if you maintain it properly. Another key factor is that it's naturally aspirated. No turbochargers, no extra pressure systems, and fewer components that can fail over time. That simplicity plays a big role in why this engine tends to age better than many smaller turbo engines. Maintenance is also more straightforward compared to more complex setups. Regular oil changes, proper care, and not abusing it constantly are usually enough to keep it running strong for a long time. It's not uncommon to see these engines reach high mileage without major internal issues, especially in trucks where they're not driven aggressively all the time. That's exactly what you want from an engine, something that can handle both daily use and occasional demand without becoming a problem. Of course, no engine is perfect, and how you treat it always matters. But compared to many other modern options, the 5.0 Coyote stands out as one of the safest bets you can make if you want a Ford engine that combines performance with real-world reliability. This is the kind of engine that doesn't just feel good when it's new, it continues to perform consistently over time. And that's what separates a good engine from one that's actually worth owning long-term. Number 3. Ford 2.5L Duratec, naturally aspirated simplicity. If there's one Ford engine that represents pure reliability without any unnecessary complexity, it's the 2.5L Duratec. This is the kind of engine that doesn't try to impress you with big numbers or advanced technology, but instead focuses on doing one thing really well, lasting a long time with minimal problems. You'll find this engine in models like the Ford Fusion, Ford Escape, and even some versions of the Ford Transit Connect. These are everyday vehicles used for commuting, family driving, and work, and that's exactly where this engine shines. The biggest advantage here is simplicity. It's a naturally aspirated engine, meaning no turbochargers, no extra pressure, and fewer components that can fail over time. Compared to smaller EcoBoost engines, which rely on turbo systems and higher stress levels, the 2.5L Duratec operates in a much more relaxed and predictable way. That lower stress is key for long-term durability. In something like a Fusion used as a daily driver, this engine just keeps going without asking for much. Regular oil changes, basic maintenance, and that's usually enough to keep it running smoothly for years. In an Escape, where people use the vehicle for short trips, city driving, and everyday use, the engine handles it without developing the kind of issues you see in more complex setups. Another important point is how forgiving this engine is. You don't need perfect driving habits or ideal conditions all the time. Even with average use, it tends to hold up well, which is exactly what most people need in a real-world vehicle. You're not dealing with carbon buildup from constant low RPM turbo driving. You're not dealing with extra heat from forced induction, and you're not relying on systems that need to work perfectly to avoid problems. It's not a fast engine, and it's not designed to be exciting, but that's the trade-off. You're giving up performance in exchange for consistency, predictability, and low long-term risk. And in the context of ownership, especially if your goal is to avoid unexpected repairs and keep costs under control, that's a trade-off that makes a lot of sense. This is one of those engines where you don't think about it much, and that's exactly the point. It just works, and it keeps working. Number 2. Ford 3.5L EcoBoost V6, if maintained properly. The 3.5L EcoBoost V6 is one of those engines that shows what Ford can do when they get the balance right between performance and real-world usability. Unlike smaller EcoBoost engines that are pushed harder for efficiency, this one was built to deliver serious power while still being capable of lasting long-term if it's taken care of properly. You'll find this engine in vehicles like the Ford F-150, the Ford Expedition, and even performance models like the Ford Raptor. And in all of them, it delivers strong torque, smooth acceleration, and the kind of power that makes driving feel effortless, especially in a truck. What makes this engine stand out is how it uses its twin-turbo setup. Instead of being constantly stressed like smaller turbo engines, the 3.5L has enough displacement to avoid working at its absolute limit all the time. That means it can produce power efficiently without putting extreme pressure on every component. In something like an F-150, this engine feels incredibly capable. Whether you're towing, hauling, or just driving normally, it has power available without needing to push it hard. In an Expedition, it moves a large SUV without feeling strained, which again helps with long-term durability. Now, this is where the key point comes in. Maintenance matters a lot. Because it's a turbocharged engine, things like oil quality, oil change intervals, and general care are critical. If you neglect it, you can run into issues like carbon buildup or turbo-related wear over time. But if you maintain it properly, this engine has proven to be very reliable for what it is. That's what makes it different from the smaller EcoBoost engines we talked about earlier. It's not inherently fragile, it just requires the right approach. And when it's taken care of, it can handle high mileage without becoming a problem, even under demanding use. That's something you don't always see in turbocharged setups. It gives you performance when you want it, but it doesn't punish you for owning it long-term, as long as you respect how it works. This is the kind of engine that rewards good ownership. Treat it right, and it will give you power, capability, and reliability all in one package. Number 1. Ford 4.6L Modular V8, proven and durable. If there's one Ford engine that has truly proven itself over time, it's the 4.6L Modular V8. This is the kind of engine that built Ford's reputation for durability in real-world conditions, not on paper, but on the road, over hundreds of thousands of miles. You'll find this engine in vehicles like the Ford Crown Victoria, the Ford Grand Marquis, the Ford F-150, and even older Mustangs. And across all of these platforms, it developed a reputation for being incredibly reliable when maintained properly. What makes this engine special is how simple and overbuilt it feels compared to modern designs. It's naturally aspirated, not pushed to extreme limits, and built in a way that prioritizes longevity over efficiency or cutting-edge performance. In something like a Crown Victoria, which was used heavily in police fleets and taxis, this engine had to handle constant idling, aggressive driving, and long hours of operation, and it did it without falling apart. That alone says a lot about how durable it is. In an F-150, it delivers steady, predictable performance without stressing itself. It's not the most powerful engine, but it doesn't need to be. It's designed to work consistently, not impress you with numbers. Another key advantage is how forgiving it is. You don't need perfect maintenance habits to keep it running. Of course, taking care of it helps, but even with average care, these engines tend to last much longer than expected. It's also a well-understood engine. Parts are widely available, mechanics know how to work on it, and there are fewer surprises compared to more modern, complex engines. You're not dealing with turbochargers, advanced fuel systems, or overly sensitive components. What you get is a straightforward V8 that does its job without creating unnecessary problems, and that's why you still see so many of these engines on the road today, often with very high mileage. They just keep going. This is what real-world reliability looks like. Not flashy, not over-engineered, just a solid, proven engine that can take abuse and keep working. And in the long run, that's exactly what most owners actually need. So there you have it. Some Ford engines will reward you for years if you choose right, and others will cost you more than you expect. Do your research, maintain it properly, and you'll stay on the safe side. See you on the road, buddy.